Hello, everyone. Our objective today is to formulate hypotheses and ask testable questions based on observation. In our previous lesson, we discussed that to observe is to take a careful look at something using any of our five senses: our sense of sight, sense of hearing, touch, taste, and smell. So if you are observing something, you are using any of your five senses. We also discussed inference, and we said inference is drawing conclusion based on what you observe. We look at some examples of observations and inferences. All right, let's move on. Our focus today is to formulate hypotheses and ask testable questions. And our launch is, when we say a car is drivable, what does it mean? Here we go. We have a Lamborghini Huracan. And when we say this Lamborghini Huracan is drivable, what does it mean? It means it drives. It means you can drive it. In the same way, when we say a question is testable, what does it mean for a question to be testable? Simply, it means you can test it. A testable question is a question that explores the effect of one thing on another. The testable question has the cause and the effect. And here are some examples. Does the amount of sunlight affect plant growth? In this testable question, we have the cause, amount of sunlight, and we have the effect, plant growth. And remember, a testable question needs to end with a question mark. Here are some other examples of testable question. Does the temperature of water affect how fast sugar will dissolve? We have the cause, we have the effect. The next one, does doing physical activity increase your height? The cause is doing physical activity, the effect is your heart rate. And finally, we have, does living in space affect your height? The cause is living in space, and the effect is your height changing. All right? And as young scientists, when we ask testable questions and make our observation, which is the first step of the scientific process or method, we don't stop there. We continue. And the next step of the scientific method is making or formulating a hypothesis. When we talk about a hypothesis is a statement that can be tested. It's not a question, and it's not a response to a question. All right? We write hypothesis using if, then, because. All right? And remember, a hypothesis is a statement that has the cause and the effect. Let's take a look at some examples of hypothesis. If a plant receives sunlight, then it will grow taller or bigger. So here we have plant A, plant B after 4 weeks. And we can observe that plant B has grown bigger or taller than plant A. All right? And our hypothesis is that plant A receives sunlight and therefore it grew taller. So if plant receives sunlight, it will grow taller. You can also simply say sunlight affects plant growth. It's a statement that has a cause and the effect. Other examples of hypotheses are below. If you increase the temperature of water, then the sugar will dissolve. If you do physical activity, then your heart rate will increase. And finally, if you live in space, then you grow taller. All right, the next is to make connection to our article about living in space. And here we have twin astronauts, identical twins, Mark Kelly and his twin brother, Scott Kelly. All right, so as young scientists, what do you observe? Let me help you answer this question. Who is taller? If you look at these two scientists, these two astronauts, who is taller? And we can see clearly that Scott Kelly is taller than Mark Kelly. All right? And what happened is that Scott Kelly went to live in space for almost a year, whilst his twin brother Mark Kelly stayed on Earth. He went to live in space, and because he went to live in space, we can also see, we can make the observation that he has grown taller than his twin brother who stayed on Earth. All right? So our observation is that we can observe that Scott Kelly has grown an inch or so taller, and his face has become a little puffy. So if you live in space, you grow an inch or so taller, depending on how long you live in space. But living in space affects your height. The reason is there is less force of gravity in space. All right? So as young scientists, based on our observation, what is our testable question? When we see something as young scientists, we need to ask questions. And the questions we ask are testable questions. So based on this observation, that living in space has made him grow taller, our testable question is, does living in space affect your height? That's a testable question. And our hypothesis is a statement from this question. And the hypothesis is a statement that can be tested. So we are only changing this question into a statement. All right? So the hypothesis will be, living in space affects your height. Or you can simply say, if you live in space, then you grow taller. All right? So that is our hypothesis. Here are some examples of testable questions and hypothesis. And for work time, I want you to complete the hypothesis using these testable questions. The first one is, does the amount of sunlight affect plant growth? Then you write your hypothesis, which is a statement that has the cause and the effect. And when you are done with work time, when you are done with everything, you move on to after the end. In after the end today, students, you'll be focusing on working on paragraph 2 of your scientific method writing project. And in this, you are going to explain what a testable question is in a scientific investigation. You are going to generate one testable question based on the experiment from the article. So you are going to make connection to what we have learned today to the article and also our project. You are going to explain hypothesis, then you are going to convert your test-based testable question into a hypothesis. All right, thank you for watching. This is Science Professor Obene.